What's up everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking to you about 5 ways to deal with defiant students. The students who tend to not want to listen to direction, who always say no, who seem to be the class clown in your class, or it's just really difficult to connect with them. I'm sure for some of you who are teachers, you already are imagining and picturing a student in your mind. A lot of people say that there are certain names they would never name their child when they have a baby because they are just so strongly associate the name with negative student. So these are some ways that I use in my classroom to try to help the student, because honestly, if they are not listening in the classroom, they're not going to want to learn anything. I'm house sitting right now and I kid you not, I order from Milk and Eggs like every week, and it really changed my life because they have so many things that I can buy and I don't have to go to the store and go to different places, because usually I only go to Trader Joe's and then Milk and Eggs. Milk and Eggs pretty much has everything I need. So I'm just gonna quickly show you guys my favorite things. Oat milk. This was my first time trying oat milk and I really liked it. One of my students told me they love eating their cereal with oat milk out of any other milk. So I tried it. It's delicious. You should get it. Next is cream cheese. I don't eat dairy, so this is a vegan cream cheese and it's chive. It's really good. They used to have jalapeno, which I loved, but they got rid of it. So this is like a close second, I guess. And then my favorite egg, they're so good, are these organic free-range eggs. Is there really a difference between the regular white eggs that you buy at like Target versus these organic, pasture-raised, free-range? Yes, there is a difference in the yolk color and the amount of nutrients that are in them. I really like it, especially for hard-boiled eggs, and I just feel like it tastes much more fresh and doesn't feel like I'm eating chemicals. If you want to try it out, my code Maya Lee will get you guys $20 off $40. So basically you're getting $40 worth of groceries for $20. Yeah, it's great. So first we need to remember that students and people are the way they are for a reason. We don't really always know what the reason is, but 99% of the time that I've encountered a student who's being difficult, it's because something's going on in the family. I've also noticed this happens more so in older kids than in younger kids, because younger kids can be defiant, but they also are afraid of getting in trouble, while some kids, as they grow up, they don't even care if they're in trouble or not. That's really sad. We need them to care, not so much about pleasing people, but about following the expectations that are put on them. Okay, so let's get started. Number 1, as hard as it is, give the students positive feedback as much as you can. Find a compliment you can give the student so that when they do something wrong, they're not constantly feeling like you always target them. Try to find a compliment that you can give the student every single day. I know it might be difficult sometimes, but even just telling them like, hey, great job following directions quickly, or look at him already starting his work. Just find anything so that they know you're not targeting them. Number 2, finding alone time to try to talk to the student. Because I've noticed that a lot of times when a kid is being defiant with me, in front of their peers, they're going to act out even more because they want to seem cool and they want to seem like, ha, I'm so funny. So even when you're passing down the hallway with the students, just go talk to them and say, hey, how was your weekend? Or try to get more personal of how was your siblings' basketball game, or just things that you hear about the student. Try to show them that you remember about them so that they know you care. Because I know it's not really about students liking you, but honestly, if they like you, they will listen to you more. Number 3, when they do act out, try to send the student outside and then give them words of affirmation of, hey, you're out here because these were the expectations and you did not meet them. It's not because I don't like you, it's because this is what I expect from you, because you can do it. You are better. You can do this as a student. So giving them that type of feedback will allow them to register, yeah, I need to take ownership over what I just did, not so much as, oh, this teacher just doesn't like me. 4, find ways to connect with the student, because when they feel like you are trying to connect with them, then they know you care. So for me, it was getting into Fortnite or looking at these gamers or finding topics that the students really enjoy and just looking it up and then asking them questions about it of, hey, so what is this really about? Then they can feel like, oh, I can actually talk to an adult about this. Number 5, try not to call them out in front of everybody. I know it's hard sometimes, especially when we're in the moment. We don't have time to step outside. For me, if I do step outside, I'm halfway in the classroom and outside because I still need to watch my kids while I'm talking to the student, but I talk in a manner where hopefully not everyone can hear. But just that gesture shows of like, hey, so-and-so, can you step outside for a second? And then just talk to them so that they're not embarrassed in front of the whole entire grade and that they're not labeled as the bad kid. Because once they're labeled, then they might just run with it, and that's what we don't want. We want them to know they're a great kid and that they can exceed the expectations that are put on them if someone believes in them. So these are just the 5 steps that I've used in my classrooms to try to get students on a better track. And a lot of them just need a lot of love. They need to know they're cared for. They need to know that it matters. What they're doing really matters. And that's something I'm still working on. Please let me know if you have any questions or you need advice on anything, and I'll try my best to answer based on the experience that I've had so far. PS tip. I guess this is a bonus tip. Something I've noticed is that a lot of kids who have family issues at home, they kind of will voice it in the classroom, whether it's them saying, you know, I don't really know who's picking me up today, or I never really know who's picking me up, or things like that where you catch on of, I wonder why. It's okay to ask them like, hey, like if you ever need anyone to talk to, I'm here for you, or how come? And just kind of hearing about them and letting them vent out to you, that kind of shows that they can trust you as an adult. And then because of that bond, they'll latch onto you and will want to listen to what you're saying because they know you are someone that they respect and trust. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.
The 7 biggest behaviour mistakes and how to avoid making them. So the number 1 biggest behaviour mistake is lack of clarity about expectations. So if you're not clear with the children on what it is that you want, how are they supposed to be able to do it? So you say to them something like, I want you to listen quietly. Now, if you say to me as a kid, I want you to listen quietly, what you're actually telling me is that it's okay for me to talk while you're talking, so long as I do it quietly. So you end up with kids whispering to each other, and you say, I told you to listen. And they look at you and they think, well, hang on a sec, you said quietly, I'm being quiet, and they get confused. So tell them what you mean. Be clear about what you mean. They're children, they need clarity. So the second big behaviour mistake is when you have a lack of consistency in your expectations. So you tell the class what it is that you want. I want one voice. And then the children start to talk over you, and you don't do anything about it. Or you talk over them. So what you're showing them is that you say that you want this thing, but you don't actually follow through. And if you operate in that way, they start to believe that they can't trust you, that you don't mean what they say, and that they can basically behave how they want. So the third big behaviour mistake is one that we've all made, or pretty much all of us. It's shouting. So the class are being naughty, and you're trying to keep your temper down. But gradually you feel the red mist rising. And you get to that point where you just feel like you're going to explode, and you say, children, will you please listen? And what you have shown the children at that moment is that they can wind you up. They can get a rise out of you. Now, if you think back to when you were at school, I suspect there was probably a teacher that you knew you could wind up. And when Mr. Jones, let's call him, when he was getting wound up and he was screaming at you and the spittle was flying across the room and he was going bright red, you weren't sat there going, oh, poor Mr. Jones. Well, maybe you were. Maybe you were the nice kid. But some of your friends, possibly not, they were sat there going, yes, got Jonesy again. Fantastic. So don't give them an incentive by shouting at them, because then they will learn that they can wind you up. So the fourth big behaviour mistake that a lot of us make is that we let our emotions rule our behaviours in front of the children. So they see when they're getting to us. They understand that they can make us sad, they can make us angry, they can make us wound up, they can make us turn into a nag. One of the things I say to, particularly to new teachers, is that as a teacher you have to learn that how you feel inside is not necessarily how you can present yourself. In fact, you have to fight your instincts. So it's a perfectly natural response to get wound up by the kids, but the minute they see you getting wound up, they've won. It's a perfectly natural response to get upset if you spend hours planning a lesson and the children disrespect it. But once again, if they see you getting upset, then they see that your emotions are close to the surface and that they can bring them out at will. Now, the fifth big behaviour mistake that a lot of us make, and you'll catch yourself doing it, I promise you, next time you're in the classroom, is asking rhetorical questions. So once again, the kids are winding you up. They're out of their seats, they're not working, and you allow your emotions to take control, and you go, why aren't you working? Why are you out of your seat? So the kid who you said, why aren't you working to, goes, well, I'm not particularly engaged with this lesson, miss. You didn't appear to make much effort. I don't think it appears to be Ofsted outstanding. The kid who's out of their seat turns to you and goes, well, I'm out of my seat, miss, because your lessons aren't particularly active and I'm a kinesthetic learner. So the minute you ask them a question, you open up a space for them to give you an answer, often a cheeky one. So unless you mean it as a question, so can I offer you some support? Don't ask it as one. Say it as a statement instead. So, big behaviour mistake number 6 is when the teacher does all the work to get behaviour sorted. So you're constantly calling to the kids to come back to you, you're constantly on top of them trying to get them to behave. The problem is if you do too much of the work and expect too little of them in terms of self-discipline, then you end up with a situation where they feel that you should be making the effort to bring them to you. What you really want is them to be able to self-regulate, to regulate their own behaviour, and they won't learn to do that if you're constantly intervening to regulate it for them. And behaviour mistake number 7, and it's a real big one, is when you stick to the front of the room. There can be that sense of feeling quite defensive. You don't want to get in amongst the kids, particularly if they're really difficult, because you kind of feel safer in your space at the front of the room. But the problem is that often the misbehaviour is happening at the back of the room. If you keep mobile around the space, particularly when the kids are working at their desks, then they never quite know when you're going to pop up behind them. So one great tip to encourage you to do this is to touch all 4 walls during the course of each lesson. That way you'll make sure you get to everywhere in the room. Something else to bear in mind as well about movement is that you will tend to teach slightly to your dominant side. So if you're right-handed, to your right; if you're left-handed, to your left. So what can happen is the children to the right get most of your attention, and there's a child right off on the left-hand corner who realises that they're completely under the radar. So keep moving around the space, keep your eyes moving around the space as well.
Classroom Discipline 101. The number one thing we need to do to maintain excellent classroom management in our classes is to have really clear expectations, teach the procedures we need the students to be able to do, and consistently enforce those things. So for example, one of the places that you might start is with hand raising. All teachers ask students to raise their hands sometimes. Some of us do it more frequently than others, but we all do it sometimes. And yet, I have never observed a teacher who is 100% consistent about having students raise their hands to speak, not even observations of myself. So that's a good place to start because we all do it. It's easy to practice being consistent around it, and my experience has been the more consistent I am in any one area of my teaching, the more I am consistent in all areas of my teaching. So for example, you ask a question. Raise your hand if you know the answer to question number 6 and some kid yells out the answer. Or the classic dilemma, you pose a question to your class and some student raises their hand and then yells out the answer. And then what do? What we do is we stay 100% consistent in honoring not the called out response, but in honoring the procedure. So I might say, Johnny, thank you for going halfway with that procedure and raising your hand, but I do need you to wait until I call on you before you answer. So let's try it again. I'll call on you and we can talk about what you said. Being consistent, 100% consistent with getting what we want when we ask for it. Being 100% consistent around hand raising doesn't mean that you need the students to raise their hands every single time they speak, right? It just means getting it when we ask for it. One of the best things I ever saw related to being consistent around hand raising was a 3rd grade teacher. And what she did is she had a brainstorm hat. It was like a bowler hat that had like a plastic toy brain sewn to it. And when she wanted the students to raise their hands, she'd say, raise your hand if, and she'd pose a question. And students would raise their hands, but when she wanted them to be able to call out and not have to raise their hands, she'd walk to a different place in her room, put the brainstorm hat on. Kids, we're gonna brainstorm now. We're gonna have a conversation. You can say what you want, when you want. Don't yell out over somebody else, but other than that, say what you want when you want. And when she was done with that, she'd take the hat off, put it back, walk to a different area in the room. We're gonna go back to hand raising now, kids. Raise your hand if. Making it crystal clear to her students when she needed a raised hand and when it was okay to call out. So if you want to practice being consistent around hand raising, this is what I suggest you do. Take a picture of a hand, print it out, blow it up poster size, put it on your back wall as a visual reminder to you that you're trying to be more consistent about hand raising and see what happens. And make it clear to the students that when you ask for a raised hand, you'll verbally say it. Kids, give me a silent hand if you know, and do a visual to reinforce it for them. And let them know if I don't do this or I don't say, give me a raised hand, then you can call out an answer. So that they can help you be consistent and they have very clear cues from you when you need a raised hand and when it is okay to call out.
So you're in front of a classroom and nothing is going right. You ask students to do something and maybe 3 students are doing what you asked them to do. A couple people are standing up and moving across the room. Maybe you ask them to sit down, like,
I gotta sharpen my pencil.
I told them if they need to sharpen their pencil to wait until we're after done with an activity, but they're not listening. You ask for their attention so you can start the next assignment. There's a few people that are still talking to each other. The student that is going to get their pencil begins sharpening their pencil. And you think, if I tell them to stop sharpening the pencil, then it's gonna turn into a power struggle and they're gonna just say,
How am I supposed to do my work if I don't have a pencil?
I'm just gonna leave that alone and let them sharpen their pencil. The students over there that are talking are probably not gonna listen anyways. And so maybe I should just start giving my instructions, because there's a few students that are listening and it really wouldn't be fair to them, I guess, to just keep waiting or keep arguing or keep trying to get all these other students to do what I'm asking them to do. And oh, I just lost one of the students that looked like they were actually kind of ready to start, but now they started talking to somebody else. It's exhausting being in a classroom that is out of control. You're constantly thinking, how do I handle this problem? And most of the time, you don't come up with a solution that solves the problem. And so you just do your best and hope tomorrow is gonna be better. And maybe that the student that's causing all the problems doesn't show up. But all hope is not lost. Hi, ladies and gents, my name's Tom Gibson, and if you are new here, I help middle school teachers design an engaging classroom experience for their students and a fulfilling teaching experience for themselves. Generally, nobody is engaged or fulfilled in a situation where your middle school classroom is out of control. And so today, let's take a look at what we can actually do about that. Most of my philosophies around classroom management come from 2 books. Harry Wong's First Day of School. I read this book maybe the summer before my first, second, and third year of teaching. And the Wongs have since come out with a second book that's really focused on classroom management. You only get one because classroom management is like the thing that you're struggling with, then you probably wanna get this one. And so the common thing that teachers talk about when they're struggling with classroom management is like, well, I told the students what they were supposed to do, but they didn't do it. The most effective strategy that I have seen with classroom management is not only telling them what you want to do, but following the teach, rehearse, reinforce model. What does that mean? The semester before my first year teaching in 2011, I was doing some long-term substitute teaching. There was one 6th grade English classroom that was out of control. I never had to sub for them, but I always heard that classroom 5 rooms down the hall. You think of like the movie where kids are like standing on the desk and it's that out of control. This was that classroom. And I was doing a job for another class and the principal had asked me, Mr. Gibson, how would you like to be a long-term sub for that classroom down the hall there for the rest of the year? There were 3 weeks left of school. And I said, yeah, no problem, sure. And then after I told him yes, I went back into the classroom. I was on my lunch break and there weren't any students. And I nearly had a panic attack because I was realizing it was the last 3 weeks of school. These students have had no structure all year. I'm coming into that situation with virtually no experience. This is gonna be hard. And so the weekend before, I had spent hours on YouTube and blogs reading up on classroom management. And a lot of the things that I came across had this teach, rehearse, reinforce model when you're asking the students to do some kind of procedure or how you want them to do anything in the classroom. And so I'll never forget that first day, the procedure that I was trying to teach the students was on how I would be getting their attention. I found this call and response method where however I said class, the students would respond with yes. So if I was like class, 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 the students would say yes, yes, yes. And so my very first day, I'm introducing that procedure. I teach them that procedure. I say, okay, in an effort to be able to have a classroom where we can get work done, sometimes I'll need to get your attention. When I get your attention, I'm gonna call class and then you're gonna say yes the same way I call class. And then I expect it to be silent so that way I can kind of share what I need to share and you guys can all continue working. Now the key with this here was that I went into this knowing I was going to rehearse this until the students did it perfectly. If I had to spend all class rehearsing this, so be it. Because the tendency is like, I'm wasting so much class time trying to do this and they're just not listening. I need to just go ahead and teach the content. You're not gonna get through much content if you cannot even get the attention of your students. So even if it took 3 class periods of just practicing this over and over again until they got it right, at least I would have that the following week and be able to get the students' attention without chaos ensuing. And so I taught them what the procedure was. Then came the rehearsing and the reinforcement. reinforcing. The first time I did it, I was like, class, class, class. And maybe 70% of the students were like, yes, yes, yes. It was kind of fun. It was like a little game for them at first. But there's a handful of students that just weren't participating. They weren't talking because I was still new and I think they were just kind of getting a gauge from me, but they weren't participating. And so instead of moving on, instead of getting frustrated, I said, it's important for us as a collective whole, as a class, to be able to do this correctly. We will move on once we have 100% full participation. And I was like kind of smiling about it because now I was really just putting it in their hands. As long as they participated, we could move on. And so try it again. Class, class, class. Yes, yes, yes. And a few more students started buying in, but not everybody. So I said, once we have 100% participation, we will move on from practicing this procedure. Class, class, class. Yes, yes, yes. Now, the reason I think the students didn't get annoyed with me for making them do it over and over again was because I wasn't frustrated. I was very calm. I wasn't like, we'll move on as soon as some people decide to actually participate, because now the students are gonna be kind of frustrated with me because I'm frustrated, and then you get a situation where they're like,
can we just go on? Can we just move from this?
and it's directed towards me. They gang up on me. Now half the class is arguing with me. Now they're not even doing it. Now the kids that were doing it are not doing it, and it just becomes this kind of, it just dissolves. So you can't get frustrated. And so I continued. We'll continue once we have 100% participation. Class, class, class. Yes, yes, yes. Now there was starting to be a little bit of pressure on the students that were not participating. The other students like,
Dude, just come on, just do it.
I was using peer pressure to positively reinforce the students to meet this expectation, because the students didn't want to keep doing this over and over again. And eventually in that class, it came down to one student, and we did it maybe 5 or 6 times just waiting for him. And I said, and I did not call that student out, which is another important thing. I didn't create a power struggle between me and him. I didn't even really look in his direction. I said, okay, once we have 100% full participation, we will move on. And so everyone knew it was on him. We could easily move on if he would just participate in the procedure. And eventually, class, and that student was, yes! And as soon as he did it, I said, thank you. So I expect us to be able to do that every time that I call for your attention, and that it would be silent just the way it is right now. And once I did that, they knew that I was serious about following through until we actually practiced the procedure to the point that it was a routine, and the expectation was that all students would follow through with it. Taught the procedure, we rehearsed the procedure over and over again until we got it right without me getting frustrated, which reinforced the procedure to the point that it became a routine, it became a habit in our class. Don't move on until they're doing it exactly the way you want them to do it. Or if you need to modify it to make it something that everyone can do, then make those modifications. But the first time you say, okay, that's good enough, that's what's gonna happen for the rest of the year. You wanna do this with any procedure, any way of doing things that you have your students doing. What to do when you enter the classroom. How do you want your class dismissed? What's the first thing students are gonna do when they sit down in your class? What does transitions look like in your classroom? What does a student do if they finish work early? How do you want students working in groups? If you carefully and thoughtfully think through how you want these procedures to look, and then you teach it, you rehearse it, and you reinforce it, you're gonna have a completely different classroom experience. And at the time of recording this, many teachers are either doing distance learning or in-person or hybrid due to COVID-19. This is all the more important now that we have procedures of exactly how students need to be to maintain social distancing, to make sure that their masks stay on, to make sure that everyone in the classroom is staying safe. Teaching procedures are a big part of classroom management, but they are not the ultimate when it comes to classroom management and classroom culture. I've put together a playlist of videos that have my best classroom management techniques and tactics and strategies that you can click on right over there to hopefully help you design an engaging classroom experience for your students and a more fulfilling teaching experience for yourself. My name is Tom Gibson. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you over on the playlist.
Hi, my name is Francois Nordia, and I am a super teacher. Maintaining discipline in your classroom is one of the most important, but also one of the most difficult classroom management skills that you need to have. In this episode, I share 5 tips on how you can improve the discipline in your classroom. Before we jump into the episode, our friends over at the Eduvation Network have agreed to sponsor more videos on this channel. In the coming weeks, we'll be running some promotions and doing some giveaways, so go check out their platform at www.eduvationnet.co.za/superteacher. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Eduvation Network's platform, it is an online platform where you can participate in SACE accredited courses and you can then claim CPTD points for these courses. This means you can complete these courses in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to wake up early on a Saturday or attend workshops during the holidays. Thank you so much to the Eduvation Network for sponsoring more episodes on this channel. For the next 2 weeks, they will be running a promotion on the website where they will be giving you 5% off on any course that you enroll, or 15% off if the entire school enrolls into a course. If you would like this promotion, use the promo code SUPERTEACHER for the 5% off, or SUPERSCHOOL if you'd like the 15% off when the whole school signs up for one of their courses. Along with the promotion, they've decided to do a giveaway on this episode where you can win a 6-month subscription to the value of 25 CPTD points. So how can you win this prize? Number 1, be subscribed to this YouTube channel. There's this red button that says subscribe. Click it if you haven't done so yet. It is free. It won't cost you a cent. 2, answer the question of the week by leaving your answer in the comment section down below. For those of you that are on a mobile device, just scroll all the way down until you see the space where you can leave a comment. 3, sign up to the Eduvation Network's Facebook page. And 4, sign up on their online platform. All of the links to everything I just said will be in the description of this video, so you can just go there and click to your heart's content. The winner of the giveaway will be announced during the episode that will upload onto YouTube on the 10th of May, and entries to this competition closes on the 3rd of May. But that's not all. The Eduvation Network has also sponsored a grand prize that they will give away after the series of sponsored episodes. This will probably be around August. What can you win as the grand prize? The Eduvation Network is giving away a tablet. And to add to the fun, we decided at Super Teachers Unite that we will give away a 500 Rand voucher to spend on any of the Super Teacher Solutions products. So how can you stand a chance to win the grand prize? I hope you're listening. Here it goes. 1. Answer the question of the week to all 4 of the sponsored episodes. How will you know that an episode is sponsored? We'll put that on the thumbnail of every episode. There will be a little logo of the Eduvation Network so that you can know that these are the sponsored episodes. So just answer the question of the week by leaving your answer in the comment section of all 4 of these videos. I will add all 4 of the sponsored episodes to a playlist on this channel so that you can access these videos much easier. 2. Be subscribed to this channel. 3. Like the Super Teacher Solutions Facebook page. 4. Like the Eduvation Network's Facebook page. 5. Sign up to the Eduvation Network's online platform. 6. Share each one of the videos on Facebook. The winner of the grand prize will be announced towards the end of August or early in September. So I know it's a lot to take in and it's difficult to keep up with what I just said, so I'll explain everything in the description of this video down below. So with all of that being said, let's educate. Whether you like it or not, corporal punishment is illegal, and it's definitely not allowed in any classroom. Now, many teachers argue that because of the elimination of corporal punishment, class discipline has gone downhill. Many teachers are frustrated and they feel that the rights of the learners trump the rights of the teacher. It is extremely difficult to try and control 35 to 40 children in one classroom and get all of them to pay attention to what you want to do during the lesson. So I thought in this episode I'd share 5 tips on how you can approach classroom management so that it improves the discipline in your classroom. All 5 of these tips basically boil down to know the learner. If you don't know who you are teaching, then it's going to be so much more difficult to try and set up a classroom in such a way that everybody pays attention. So we've broken it down into 5 very basic approaches. Firstly, you need to know the learning preferences of the learners in your classroom. Normally people would talk about learning styles or learning preferences as if everybody just learns in one way. I often hear teachers say that one learner would be a visual learner. That means that you have to use more visually stimulating resources or materials when you teach to that learner. Or another learner would be an auditory learner. So you would use sounds or you would play audio tapes for this learner. But we need to understand that learners are holistic individuals. Yes, they might prefer learning in one specific way, but we can't say that they are only visual or they're only auditory or that they're only kinesthetic learners. But when you know the learning preferences of the children in your classroom, you can devise classroom management strategies or even plan a lesson so that the majority of learners are engaged for the entire lesson. When learners are bored, you normally see discipline flying out of the window. The second tip is to know your customers. So when you plan a lesson that is out of the norm or a bit unusual, you will know what type of behavior to expect from the individual learners, and you can then plan for this behavior. Normally it is when teachers are surprised by behavior that they don't have a strategy and they resort then to either shouting or chasing children out of the classroom, and this is not constructive at all for anybody involved. Remember, you want the learner's attention, so make sure that the strategies that you employ keep their attention. The third tip that I'd like to share is one that I struggle with immensely, and that is giving guidelines, setting expectations, and being clear in your instructions. I struggle with this because I'm much more of a spontaneous teacher. I don't like to plan every single part of the lesson. But when you give a lot of freedom in your classroom, it often leads to some discipline issues. And if you're not equipped to deal with it, it can turn into chaos quite quickly. So what I've learned is that I should be very clear and explicit in my instructions. And then I should almost over-explain the instructions so that everybody would know what I expect of them. So make sure you set boundaries. Children like boundaries even though they don't want to admit to it. Of course, with clear boundaries, there should also be clear consequences. Learners should know exactly what to expect if they misbehave. Ideally, learners will manage their own behavior autonomously with little help from you. But for this, you would need to be consistent in your approach in the classroom. The fourth tip is to communicate in different ways. Don't only rely on verbal instructions. Make sure that your instructions are also visible in text. You can use posters or you can even use a PowerPoint slide with your instructions. I normally leave the instructions in text so that the learners can see throughout the activity what I expect of them. The same goes for classroom rules. It is okay to discuss the rules, but you should definitely have some visible form of the rules up in your classroom. And then lastly, understand the influence that different personality types has on your classroom discipline. Everybody is unique and we all have our own very special personalities. As a teacher, you need to understand how these personalities interact. And this is so difficult. In your classroom, you've got 35 or 40 or sometimes even more different personalities. And when they are teenagers, those personalities tend to differ from day to day. It is almost impossible to predict the behavior. But when you understand the learners, when you really get to know them, you can start to predict how things will play out in your classroom. So if you look at all 5 of these tips, it really just boils down to knowing the learner in your classroom. Now, how do you get to know the learners? And it's simple actually. Spend time with them. So many times teachers rush to the staff room to spend their breaks there drinking coffee and in some cases gossiping. This is what mediocre teachers do. Super teachers take time out to really get to know the learner. Get to know what makes the learners tick. Get to know their interests, but more importantly, also get to know what pushes their buttons. When you know the learner, you can start devising classroom management strategies that will improve the discipline in your classroom. Now, it's very difficult to try and convey the message or the strategies and how you can improve classroom management in a short YouTube video. So, of course, there are many other ways in which you can improve your classroom management. One of the featured content creators on the Eduvation platform is called Headwise, and they have got a course on how you can improve your classroom management. So make sure you head on over to the Eduvation Network's platform and sign up for the course presented by Headwise. It is called Transforming Education: The Dynamics of Classroom Discipline. This then brings us to the question of the week. How do you maintain classroom discipline? Answer the question in the comment section down below, and then remember, you stand a chance to win the prize for this episode. Remember, you can earn CPTD points just by watching the videos on this YouTube channel. If you'd like to find out how you can claim your points for this episode, check the video that is being linked up here right now. So if you like what we do on this channel, make sure you give this episode a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you would like to see all super teachers unite under one banner so that we can make a positive difference in each and every classroom. If you'd like to see more episodes on this channel, just click on the links right here. Until next time, I'm Francois Nordia, and I am a super teacher.